I'm Emmanuel Bonejayi. I'm the host for this session with Matt Morrison, who's the Director General of the Pacific Northwest Economic Region. I would like to acknowledge and respect the Langkwanghan speaking people on whose traditional territory the University of Victoria stand, and Langkwanghan Massanet people whose relationship with the land continues to this day, and say that today is a wonderful, beautiful day, very sunny, but less hot than yesterday's. We're quite lucky in that way, because yesterday I thought it was too warm. So this afternoon, we are going to basically learn about how cross-border relations work between Canada and the US. And Matt is probably the most qualified person in the whole continent to tell us how the relationship works between Canada and the US, because he's the head of that very large organization that brings together states and provinces and territories across the whole Pacific Northwest of Canada, US. And he has managed this organization, has been the lead of this organization for well over 20 years, and has resolved hundreds of policy conundrums thanks to the organization. And also one of the characteristics of the organization that you started to discover yesterday is that contrary to the EU, where most of the partners are from the public sector, in North America, it's very important to have private sector and public sector partners working together on a lot of the different policies and questions that arise when people are trading or when people are crossing the border. And so I think I think listening to Matt is extremely interesting, and also doing the practicum afterwards will be quite fascinating. It gives you quite of a different exposure to how policymaking is made across the border in North America. And with that, I'm delighted to introduce Matt Morrison, Director General of the Pacific Northwest Economic Region. Matt, take us away. Thank you very much.
Emmanuel, thank you so much. Very happy to be with all of you, and would love to hear a brief introduction of those in the room and those online. Before we get started, could we do just a quick introduction of where you're from and what your interest in this class is? Very brief. Maybe go around the room in UVic first.
Okay, I'm Avani. I'm from Sri Lanka. I work for the Department of Sri Lanka Customs, and I'm interested in this course because I'm involved with the work with the trade and trade facilitation. So that's all.
Onome?
Okay, hello, my name is Onome. I'm a research assistant working with the Borders in Globalization lab, working with Emmanuel here. And I do research for the lab, basically in border studies and things related to borders. So this course just helps give me a better understanding of what it's all about.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming to Whistler next week. We're looking forward to it.
See you next week.
My name is David Monty. I'm the head of a digital agency in Vancouver. I actually live near Whistler. Our agency is focused on knowledge databases, expert systems, portals, websites. We've worked with big labs and others at UVic and UN agencies. And so I'm in this course to gain more context and background knowledge for my own work.
Thanks, David.
Hello, my name is Edison Introvini. I work in Brazilian Customs as a Deputy General Coordinator, and I'm also in charge of the Technical Committee #2 in Mercosur that is in charge of customs questions and trade facilitation. My interest in this course is because we are trying to make some steps forward in our borders in Mercosur.
Thank
Fantastic.
you so much. Tatiana,
Hello, everyone again. Currently, I'm in Minsk, Belarus, but I completed my PhD on Eastern Partnership countries and European Union cooperation with Eastern neighbors like Belarus and Ukraine in particular at the University of Victoria. And now I'm a big lab researcher focusing on Eastern European countries. And I think I'm very much interested in security issue and that will be discussed today.
thank you so much, Tatiana. Okay, let's come back to Lauren. Brenda, do you want to take the floor, introduce yourself quickly, please?
Hi, my name is Brenda Ongeki. I'm from Kenya, Kenyan Revenue Authority. I work in the Customs and Border Control Department, but currently I'm in the Netherlands at Maastricht University doing my master's in Customs and International Supply Chain Taxation. I'm interested in this course because I'll be able to advise my department back at home on policies that will help make good border management policies in my country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Katerina Apostolidou.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone again. My name is Katerina Apostolidou. I am a customs officer. I live in Greece, in an island of Greece, which is called Lesbos. My bachelor is in law and my PhD in sociology. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Maybe we go now to Ketahun Mengesha. Sorry, Ketahun.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Getao Mengesha. I'm from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. I worked in Ethiopian Customs Authority as a senior expert in customs and finance. Now I have a great interest to study about international trade and its impact on economic development. I am happy to be in this forum with these great guys with great experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Jeffet Shiradza. Jeffet, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Javed Shiradza from Zimbabwe, Southern Africa. I'm a trainer by profession, focusing on domestic taxes and customs issues. My interest in this course emanate from the fact that we do a lot of border control issues, but now with this course, the introduction of cross-border management brings in a lot of dimension in terms of like issues such as environment, cross-border relationships. Something that is of so much interest to me, considering that I did my master's in policy studies in Japan, and I would like to widen my understanding on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to go to Tatiana Siavundu.
Thank you so much. Greetings, everyone. My name is Tatiana Siavundu. I'm a talent and organizational development officer with the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority from Zimbabwe. So this course is going to be an eye-opener. It has already been an eye-opener to me, as I expect to learn more on border management and border control, and would like to plug a leaf on how we can best manage our borders. So, as Zimbabwe Revenue Authority, one of our mandate is to advise the government on fiscal and economic matters. So I'm sure I will learn one or two things that I will take back to my country. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now we go to Faith Mathange.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Faith Matenge. I'm a customs officer by profession, and currently I'm a program officer at the WCO Regional Office for Capacity Building at Eastern Southern Africa. I have an interest in trade facilitation matters, and I'm a budding researcher. So I'm looking forward to learning much more that I can contribute towards the modernization in terms of border management in my region. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lauren, did you join us?
Hi there. Yeah, sorry, I was having some audio issues earlier. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, very well. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah, Lorraine Laytek, Chief of Operations for Canada Border Services here in Victoria, BC. I guess for me, I'm most interested in learning about any best practices that are happening in other areas of the world, being that it's a cross-border sort of international scope. And so how we can apply them there and how I might be able to share those with my senior management team.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Matt, I think we've gone around the room at this point, and I've seen people come in as we were speaking. So if there are a few more people that come in the room, maybe we'll invite them to introduce themselves in a few minutes, but that's kind of who we are and who we have for now. Thank you so much.
Wonderful class and just great to hear everyone, and glad we have an expert, Lorraine, at CBSA in Victoria. That's terrific.
Thank you. I'll try to live up to that. I don't know about expert, but I will definitely share what I know. Thank you.
No, that's great. I know Nina there in Vancouver, and you have a great team for sure.
We do.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the Pacific Northwest Economic Region, which was formed while we were watching the EU being formed in Europe with economic integration. And in Canada and in the US, out here in the Northwest of the US, we thought all of our economic watersheds flow north and south between Canada and the US, much more than east and west. So we have always had good relationships between the US states and the provinces, but there's so many details that you would know working in customs and in borders that sometimes the federal governments away in their federal capitals just don't have the capacity or the ability to bring local solutions to issues that are continuously coming up on border regions. So the Pacific Northwest Economic Region was formed 35 years ago by, I think, some very visionary public servants, legislators in the states and provinces. And they created this we call PNWER, PNWER, to address environmental issues, security issues, economic issues, border policies. Even though we are not a federal government, we're a subnational, regional, cross-border entity. We do exist in statute in each of the states and provinces. We have 5 states: Alaska, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana. 3 provinces of Canada: British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and then the Northwest Territory and the Yukon. So 5 jurisdictions in Canada and 5 in the US, 10 jurisdictions in all. And it's a pretty big map. If maybe I'll share my screen here and, oh, wait, this is it. And you can see that, this probably is as large as many countries. So it's a big part of North America. And the point is that the mission of this organization is to increase the economic well-being and quality of life for all citizens in the region while maintaining and improving our natural environment. So this is an economic region And what's interesting, for some of you in looking at security issues and border policy, the economy affects all of border policy. And what we've tried to do is pull together the private sector along with the public sector to really look at some of the critical issues for border crossings and for the facilitation at the border. As I said, the economic watersheds are flowing north and south here. You can see that Washington State, with a population of 7.5 million, is the largest, but British Columbia is probably 5 million now and growing. The whole area is growing in population. So we have 25 million people in this geographic region. And you can see a little bit about the GDP relationships between the various states and provinces. So I think that the key thing here is that this region has tremendous amount of trade flowing back and forth, over $2 billion a day between Canada and the US. These are energy, all kinds of things are going back and forth. Canada and the US are each other's largest source of direct investment, and some 35 states have Canada as their largest customer, and the provinces likewise with the states. So we definitely were formed to work with stakeholders in both the public and private sector to identify and reduce trade impediments. And as I said, as you well know, there are trade impediments in every sector. So one of the things we had to do in the beginning, in the early 90s, was decide which are the key sectors that we want to focus on. And we wanted to have some early wins. And so really divisive issues, we decided to delay for the first decade. And up here, the most divisive is fish, management of salmon and fish. So we did not address that issue, but we formed initially 5 working groups, and now we have 20 working groups. And I'll just show you a little bit. I talked already about the size of the exports from states going to Canada, 13 billion. Let me go past this, go to my working group. Okay, so these are the sectors. Each year, sometimes we add one and sometimes we retire one, but I'll just start at the top. The border issues go into every one of the working groups. And I'll later on talk about how we are trying to work with our border agencies on enhancing security, streamlining throughput for tourists and passengers, and also addressing future issues like the FIFA World Cup games will come here in 2 years, and we have a lot of things we'd like to see happen before then. Mining is a big issue, energy and environment, the whole energy world. We're so interconnected with energy, and the policies that drive energy are both federal, state, and provincial. That's why it's so valuable to get all 3 or 4 levels of government in the same room with the private sector to talk about how do we enhance our energy system. Right now, we're experiencing a spike or a severe increase in our load requirements for our energy system, where it was for nearly 15 years quite flat. We were not getting a lot more electrical load, but now because of electric cars and because of AI and server farms and a number of things, we really have to talk with each other because our infrastructure is integrated across the border. Agriculture, similarly, we share watersheds, we share irrigation systems, we share livestock crosses the border sometimes 3, 4, 5 times before it's finally harvested. So agriculture is a big part of our economy. Disaster resilience. We formed a Center for Regional Disaster Resilience because disasters are becoming more severe and more frequent, and they know no border. So disasters, whether it's floods, fires, hurricanes, earthquakes, we have to be prepared in a cross-border manner. Tourism, we many years ago started the concept of a 2-nation vacation to try to eliminate barriers for tourists to come to the region and visit both Canada and the US. Transportation and infrastructure is really the lifeblood of our economy. And yet our transportation systems are all controlled and directed by a state or a province or a territory, and very seldom integrated. In the US, all transportation dollars flow directly to the states, and there is no, for example, corridor and gateway program on how do we get goods to the ports, which is one of the things that we are focusing on with the Pacific Northwest Economic Region. Workforce development is another key area. And I know many of you are in the customs responsibility and roles, and workforce is something that is hugely important. And especially we saw during the pandemic how important it was to allow healthcare professionals to be able to cross the border and assist. Very difficult issue, but important one. Trade and economic development, FDI, foreign direct investment, our trade, working diligently on the NAFTA agreement and the US MCA, it's called, and CUSMA in Canada. But those agreements, we were very, very involved in bringing private sector input and state and provincial input into our federal negotiators. Forestry, invasive species, water policy, cross-border livestock health. Next week, we'll have a cross-border exercise, the first of 3 of them. It is funded by the US federal government. We're going to have it in Whistler, Canada, and it will be looking at livestock health, a disease outbreak among cattle in Canada. And we found that there are many gaps that are really critical to overcome. Just 2 years ago, there was a large flood in British Columbia, and our many cattle were endangered. But there was a lack of understanding on the US of how to make sure how to respond to this emergency. It was the largest disaster in Canadian history. Cut off the largest port in the country from the rest of the country for almost 3 weeks. And so these are an overview of the issues that we're facing in Penwar. this is very complicated, but the point is that we set this up as a statutory organization, meaning that it was identical laws were passed in all 5 states, and in the beginning, 1991, in just 2 provinces, British Columbia and Alberta, and then expanded to the other 3 Canadian members. But what you can see here is the governors, the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the private sector are involved. So I know it's a complicated slide, but every year we take a number of our board members and visit the state and provincial capitals to talk about important regional issues. So there's face-to-face opportunities to understand what the issues are between Oregon and Alberta or British Columbia. And then we also go to Ottawa and DC to be a regional voice and to make sure that our ambassadors and that our congressmen and senators and prime ministers and presidents understand what's important to the region. And because our board is mainly state and provincial legislators and ministers, we often have very good meetings and very good access to some of our national leadership. So these working groups, which I just went through, are co-chaired by an industry person from the private sector and a government co-chair, and sometimes an academic co-chair. The issues that we deal with are driven by the work groups. Some are initiated by the business and industry, some by public. In the environment working group, we have a major issue with invasive species. That's one that's, well, it's both the public and the private, but it's been very important, and it's an important border issue because we don't want to spread these particular invasive mussels that go into fresh water and really have tremendous economic impacts if they impact our water systems. So each working group has a vetting process to develop a work plan for the working group, and our action plan as a PENWR organization is decentralized through this working group leadership. So I've been through this. Some of our major initiatives over the last 30 years, I mentioned invasive species. We were able to procure now 32 million in US federal funding for prevention for aquatic invasives. And this remains a big issue because the Columbia River here starts in Montana, goes to British Columbia, and then comes back to Washington and Oregon. We have many cross-border water bodies that we found it really requires a cross-border region to fully address the issues that are in the cross-border basins. I mentioned regional disaster resilience. After September 11th in 2001, we realized that the terrorism was a possibility and formed this regional disaster resilience center. And we have had every year 2 or 3 major exercises looking at all of the key risks that we face in the region. Power outages or power disasters, which could, come from not only a big storm, but also a terrorist attack. We've looked at floods. We've looked at telecommunication systems, and most important, we've looked at the interdependencies between our critical infrastructures and how they function, especially when 85% of our critical infrastructure is owned by the private sector. It's very difficult for government to actually understand these interdependencies and what single points of failure can lead to disastrous results. Then I mentioned energy, how integrated our energy system is, and our energy ministers and energy chairmen coming together year after year said, you know, our policymakers, the legislators in my committee, they're they're out on a tractor one day, and the next day they're in the Capitol voting on this very complicated energy policy, and they don't have time to understand what the energy. They don't understand the issues they're voting on. So, from a leadership perspective, they said, "Please help us develop a boot camp. We need a training program for legislators." And we set this up 15 years ago. It's supported by both the US federal government and the Canadian federal government and the private sector. And it's a 60-hour course that we now have graduated over 400 legislators, about 35 per year. And tomorrow I'll be going to lead a group of 40 legislators and also governors, energy advisors, to be looking at how the energy system works, how it's financed, how it's regulated. And then we go for 4 days in Washington State and then 3.5 days in Washington, D.C. And it's given legislators a chance to more fully understand how interconnected we are and how the energy system functions. So this is one of the products that came out of the working group addressing challenges in the region, the binational region. And it's for legislators in Canada and in the US. So another one is the Border Coordination Council. We formed a pre-clearance task force and have been working on pre-clearance for the last many years, and pre-clearance is now finally a reality. But we're looking at expanding pre-clearance, not only in Canada, US pre-clearance stations, but also Canadian pre-clearance in the US. And there have been many issues about the pre-clearance of goods and the pre-clearance of people. And they're different, and they have different solutions. But I'm happy to say that our group here in Seattle started a pre-clearance task force 7 years ago, and we had regular calls. And the leadership in Ottawa and in DC always attended those calls because no one else was doing it. And we had the private sector involved. We had the common carriers, the train, the buses, the ferries. And it was really important for the pre-clearance system to get where it is today, to have and build those trusted relationships.
Matt, since you started speaking, we have Claire, who joined us. She is French and works for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Dominican Republic, in the Dominican Asian Joint Bilateral Commission. And we also have, sorry, something just slipped. we have Maura, but she has connection issues, and I can see that she slipped out of the class once again. So Nora will
Okay.
join us again later. Questions
Well-
or comments? Do we have questions in the room? Do we have questions online? Please raise your questions or comments to Matt now.
Oh, that's true. You can put them in the chat. Maybe they're there.
I have a question. I have Faith first. Sorry, David. Faith, take the floor. You're next.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt, for the presentation so far. Just a comment on sharing the Kenyan experience on pre-arrival clearance. I think for us, we are doing just slightly over 30% or thereabout of all the imports. It's been a journey, and one of the challenges that we faced is first, of course, on the issue of the manifest, that our national laws provided that the manifest should be provided within 24 hours before arrival of the vessel. So you will find that many times our clearance was based on the manifest, which was not available early enough. So currently, just I think within this last financial year, then the Customs Administration chose to modify the procedure so that we can allow declarations to be done on the basis of a bill of lading, just to try to sort out the issue of the manifest. I think the other challenge has just been where Customs is talking about pre-arrival clearance, but we realized that we couldn't do it without the other partner government agencies. So a lot of meetings and coordination. Of course, we are using the single window system for the permits and the licenses. But sometimes you'll find the partner government agencies may not issue certain permits or licenses prior to importation. So that complicates it a bit, but the commitment is there and we are seeing the gains of pre-arrival clearance. Thank you.
Well, congratulations that you have created the single window environment. That's a big step forward. And I don't know if Lorraine would want to comment on from a Canadian perspective on the pre-clearance of goods and how you process those things. Lorraine, would you want to make a comment to Faith on that?
Yeah, I'll be honest, in the commercial mode, the goods, that is not my strong point. I do work mostly in traveler operations, but as you probably know, there's a new system coming to force, the CARM system. Are you familiar with that? For collection revenue management, for those that might not know, but that will change the face of how we process goods a little bit. So currently, everything is done electronically through what they call it EDI. So it's a submission of information beforehand before they get to the border for all goods coming in, and they are essentially pre-cleared. An officer will do a risk assessment and either release the goods, or if they're flagged for referral, then they'll kind of have a flag on it for when they get to the border. So there is a system in place for sort of pre-clearance of commercial goods and collection of revenue ahead of time before they get to the border. So I'm not sure if that's similar to other countries and their sort of initiatives they have in place.
No, thank you very much, Lorraine. That's very helpful. And we on cargo coming south, we have tried very much to establish a system like they have in New York, pre-arrival readiness system for trucks, because every now and then you have a truck that hasn't done their paperwork and it blocks the entire lane for a long time. So that's one of the solutions we're trying to expand from the there's a long bridge in New York, and one truck would back the trucks up for 2 to 3 miles. And so they created a fabulous system where before you got to the bridge, you got a green light or a red light. If you didn't have your paperwork, you had to pull aside and get out of the lane, get out of the
Okay.
line, get it fixed. That's
Yeah.
a southbound. That was a CBP working closely with CBSA, and we're trying to do that at Pack Highway now.
Yeah, okay.
Similar pilot, but Faith, it sounds like you're you know, the pre-clearance is it's a sticky wicket. It's not easy on the goods side, and we're still working on it with US and Canada, but it's so important to the free flow of goods, and making sure that our economy is flowing.
Mm.
On the people side, and again, Lorraine, this is what we're working on for FIFA. You know, we're going to be inundated with 1 million visitors from all over the world, and FIFA is having a 3-country World Cup: Canada, US, and Mexico.
Right.
And we are anticipating a lot of challenges. So we have a working group trying to get ahead of that one.
Okay. Yeah, as you probably know, Matt, we have like the National Targeting Center, right? That's where we try and do pre-screening of travelers before they arrive in Canada, but that's not for all modes. Obviously, for land, that doesn't really apply. It's more in the air mode, and with submarine arrivals like cruise ships as well. But perhaps that, perhaps there's some capability there. I'm not sure, to do some sort of pre-screening.
Yeah,
I
we're
know
looking
during the
at
Olympics.
expanding pilots that have already been done, like with the cruise industry, with the full pre-clearance at the Vancouver station, the train station. We may
Mhm.
be able to pre-clear buses and seal them by, this is southbound again. CBP may be able to seal the bus. Right now, the bus has to unload at the border with all of its luggage.
Okay.
So this takes forever.
Mhm.
And this is one of the pilots that we're working on.
Okay. Yeah, our different modes, like in cruise ships, we employ what we would call light touch, sort of, right? Like,
Yeah,
we're not
exactly.
speaking with every
Right.
traveler, because there's no capability to do that. Some of these cruise ships now accommodate 6,000 or 7,000 people each. In Victoria alone, we have maybe 3 arrivals a day. So it's just not possible to speak with everyone. So it's really doing those risk assessments the best you can before the travelers get here. And yeah, maybe some other initiatives or pilots, but I'm wondering if it might be the same sort of situation for FIFA. I know during the Olympics too, I was working at Vancouver Airport during that time, and there was, I think, a couple different initiatives they had going then to accommodate the huge influx of travelers and spectators to come and watch the games. So yeah, I wonder if there's any best practices from the Olympics that might be able to be taken into account.
That's well, we'll get back to I guess, to my presentation, but we worked hand in glove with CBSA and CBP and created for the US, the enhanced driver's license, which
Mhm.
was a huge enabler for the 2010 Olympics and continues to
Yeah.
be. Yeah.
Mhm.
But that was exactly right. It was tourism professionals and private sector saying Americans don't have enough passports. They're not going to be able to come. What are we going to do? And so we came up with that solution, but it took a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'll go back to my presentation, and if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and I will watch the chat so that I can address them. Thank you. The last one on this slide is just the Arctic strategy. We found that the territories in Canada had developed a significant effort, which which really helped determine Canada's Arctic strategy. And the US only has one state, that's Alaska. And Alaska is a prominent state in Penwar, and they learned so much from the territories about, nobody in Washington, D.C. really cares about the Arctic. We have to do it. We should follow what the territories in Canada did. And so with a 4-year process, they developed an Alaskan Arctic strategy, which has impacted the US federal strategy for the Arctic. I did want to talk about as some of I mentioned our work with the enhanced driver's license, and that was really that so many US citizens didn't have passports, and it was an innovative solution to allow for states to provide an enhanced driver's license that would be acceptable at the national border. And it has made a huge difference for people in border communities. Sometimes you don't carry your passport with you all the time, but you always have a driver's license. So it's been hugely effective in the border communities. And we think that those kinds of examples are what we're looking for FIFA. The other thing I wanted to talk briefly about is the regional disaster resilience work. We've done numerous cybersecurity exercises. We did some cross-border exercises prior to the Olympics. We have suggested that we should have something like a first responder nexus in case the border was closed for a law enforcement reason. It would be nice to quickly allow first responders to cross the border for emergencies. We're still working on that one. I mentioned the electrical grid system is so interconnected, and that it was our legislators who said we really have to have an institute to help train legislators. And that's been a hugely successful program. Invasive species, we are currently facing some very, very crucial cross-border invasive species, both in the aquatic and also on land-based. Believe it or not, we have wild hogs, or feral pigs, they're known as, and they're causing a real problem for our livestock industry on both sides of the border. The work that we've done with transportation, and this is an example, I guess, of what a cross-border public-private partnership can do, is because we have these working groups coming together and looking at what are our biggest challenges. I mentioned that one of the problems with our transportation funding is it's segmented and there's no corridor and gateway program. Canada had a legendary Pacific Gateway strategy, which the states were very envious of, because they lined up federal, provincial, and local policy and did something that we haven't been able to do in the States, create a gateway, the Pacific Gateway, not to Canada, but to North America. And so we have been talking about this with our congressional leadership. And 10 years ago, we were able to get into a congressional bill that there should be, what happened there?
Matt, it's me. It's the presentation you sent me. If you want, we can use it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Why don't we go to
You give me a slide number.
okay. I can't see this slide. Sorry. Slide number 17. Thanks. Appreciate it. So we did get Congress to pass a bill to create a regional infrastructure accelerator. And after 5 years of getting it into the bill, then we finally got it funded, and Penware had created an innovative infrastructure finance task force. And in 2022, we were one of the first to receive a grant to set up a regional infrastructure accelerator. And we've just received our second round of funding for that, looking at public-private partnerships and regional projects that sometimes don't get funded because they're beyond a certain state, where we're looking at the regional economy and, as I mentioned before, the importance of our ports and gateways. So this is an ongoing effort, and we have legislators and public and private leaders on an advisory team working with our, now it's Pacific Northwest Regional Infrastructure Accelerator. And it's been touted by the Department of Transportation as really a great model. We're the only multi-state RIA in the country. And what we're working on now, I don't know if it's relevant to you, but is the systems integration of our energy systems with our transportation systems. We're trying to answer the question, how do we merge green transportation with smart transportation? How do we decarbonize the transportation system? In order to answer that question, you have to have a real careful systems integration plan for the electric grid, hydrogen, fueling stations, and it all has to be mapped with the transportation system. We're looking at trains, at all of our interstates and our border crossings, and how can we decarbonize these? Hydrogen is a brand new issue, and in the Pacific Northwest, the state of Washington just received $1 billion in federal funding to be a Pacific Northwest hydrogen hub over the next 8 years to look at the hydrogen economy. Meanwhile, British Columbia has its own hydrogen hub, actually 3 of them. And just 4 months ago, we were asked by the government of BC to reach out to Washington State's hydrogen hub. And we're now doing a study with Deloitte on the future of the cross-border hydrogen economy. And part of it is looking at both production and utilization, as well as storage and transportation of hydrogen. So I'm trying to understand where is the demand for hydrogen in the region? Where will it be in 10 years from now? How do we incentivize the development of hydrogen demand? And how do we incentivize the production of hydrogen? So this remains a big issue for the region and a growing issue. Next slide. We, during COVID, were able to apply for a grant just to try to deal with the transportation and hospitality sector and help them recover from COVID. And this was a very successful project that I'm sure that in many of your jurisdictions, the travel and tourism and hospitality sector were devastated by COVID. So we'll go to the next slide. I think the idea here is that if you have a cross-border organization that meets regularly, then the possibility of responding to urgent demands as they come up is far better than it ever would be if you didn't have a long-term opportunity of stakeholders meeting together. I didn't say, but our summit, which will be in Whistler here in a week, 2 weeks, will bring 650 legislators, industry leaders from all 10 jurisdictions. All 20 of these working groups will meet, and we will come up with action items, and we will that contributes to our work plan. So this slide is just the Arctic Caucus. Even though some of the states are not necessarily thinking about the Arctic, the territories in Alaska, this was a big deal. So in the discussion within PENWR, we made the decision that if 3 jurisdictions had an issue that they wanted to address, that they could do that as long as they funded it. So that the other 10 were not necessarily supporting that, but were supporting it in principle. So we have done a lot of looking at the subnational perspectives in the Arctic, and it's just extraordinary to me that there wasn't anyone else dealing with it. The border between Alaska and the Yukon and the Northwest Territories. So it's been a valuable forum. Let's go to the next slide. How is PENWR funded? We have about a $2 million budget per year. We now have 14 staff, and we are funded really 3 ways: through the state and provincial dues, and then sponsorships, and then grants and contracts. Those are our 3 legs of the stool. So later on, if we break into a discussion, what I'm hoping you're thinking about is how could you create a PENWR where you are? How could you start an organization that could really address some of the difficult issues in a cross-border region? And certainly, I know the EU has 56 of these, and they're very alive and well and funded by the EU. In this case, this was really bootstrapped by our states and provinces, but they, I think, have seen over time the tremendous value of what we do as an organization, and we have them very involved. The next slide. And these are some of our private sector sponsors and partners from many different industries. But the private sector, I think the value to them is that they can come to one table and talk to policymakers from 10 jurisdictions in 2 countries. And that's been a very good incentive for the private sector to be engaged. All right, next slide. So recently we've, in preparation for FIFA, we've formed a regional tourism council to focus on binational regional tourism as a board of public and private tourism professionals from all jurisdictions. And we're looking for how do we do better coordination for the FIFA games? And in Whistler, Lorraine, we'll be having a number of discussions with CBP and CBSA, and also with FIFA is going to come, and we're talking about, as you mentioned, the air mode is a little easier to deal with, and you have advanced passenger manifests, and we'd like to be able to do that for buses, trains. You know, now that we do have a pre-clearance facility for our Amtrak Cascades, we're trying to get up to 4 trains a day for during FIFA. We only have 2 right now, but what we want to do is try to streamline for the traveling public, and also look at how can we learn from the pre-clearance in the air environment. How could it be used on the land border? So, you know, for years we've talked with CBP about advanced passenger manifest for buses. We've also talked about a program a pilot that would allow people using the land border to make an appointment to send all their documents in advance, to be in a sense, pre-vetted, not necessarily pre-adjudicated, but to have a ready lane at the border. And everyone in the car would have sent their passports in advance electronically, also the license plate of the car. So when the car comes up to the booth, the guy at the booth will have a list of everybody who's in the car. They will have already been vetted through watch lists, etc. And his job will be just to verify that those 4 or 5 names are the people, in fact, in the car. So we're trying to do this. It's kind of like an expanded Nexus opportunity. And for those of you from other countries, Nexus is our binational trusted traveler program. It's been a very successful program. Both Canada and the US vet applicants, and they're given a Nexus card, which works anywhere on the Canadian-US border, airplanes, land borders, and it's really been the strategy of trying to, instead of find a needle in the haystack, reduce the size of the haystack. You know, for all the people we know a lot about, we're de-risking the border environment. So go to the next slide. I guess I've come to the end of my presentation here. What I thought would be of value, and this is just my suggestion, but I'm happy to have more questions also, is to have, we can go to questions and comments. And after that, I'd like to suggest 2 group discussions. One is what what would you do and what might you have already done or in planning for a FIFA World Cup that's being held in 3 countries? And group 2, how can regional, subnational, cross-border organizations improve border management and border relations? And how do you create them? So let's take a pause for questions.
We have a question in the room, from David.
Okay,
We
David.
heard earlier in this course about the Cascadia cross-border region, the economic zone. Do you have other similar groups, like say along the Alaska border or in the Prairie area that are as part of your jurisdiction?
No, I'm on the board of the Cascadia Innovation Corridor. So we work very closely with Cascadia, but there was a northern Great Plains effort that tried to begin. There is one in the Great Lakes. It's the Council of Great Lakes Governments. In the east with the PEI and the Maritimes and Maine, and we've been out there several times to suggest they could form something like Penwar, but so far the only one really is the Great Lakes effort. And the Great Lakes is still, it's only 3 years old. It has a staff of 1.5, and they have an annual conference, but it doesn't have the kind of breadth that's happening here. It's a good question. I mean, I think every region should have one.
Yeah.
Question for
Do we
Lorraine?
have more questions, comments, questions online?
Lorraine.
Sorry, my comment was actually just in
Lorraine.
relation to your question from the room. Because the Yukon and Alaska border, and the northern BC and Alaska border are within my district, I know a little bit about what happens up there as far as like stakeholder engagement in the border. So there is a CBSA and industry and Yukon tourism working group, and they meet regularly and kind of go over issues and collaborate on how they can streamline sort of border policies and issues. It also includes the White River First Nation. A lot of our borders kind of cross within or on First Nations land, so there's huge kind of considerations there. But it's not I should say like a private sector sort of led group. It's just a collaborative committee between government and external agencies.
Yeah, no, I am aware of that with Premier Raj Pillai and the governor of Alaska, and we have met, and we are always working on Skagway as the port
yes.
of the Yukon, and trying to make sure that the mining interests in the Yukon have the capacity. It's that port of Skagway. No, I mean, a lot of these things come up at Penwar because it's a larger group, but certainly that's one of the things we're always trying to foster is more collaboration on particular issues. But when we do our state capital visits, we often have had the mayor of Skagway and Whitehorse come down to Juneau, and we have a roundtable about the issues there.
Yeah. It's good to know. It's become very popular as a tourist destination, as you probably know from the cruise ships. So yeah, and obviously the resource industry there. So I'm surprised they don't have like your kind of Pacific Northwest group up there yet, but maybe that will one day be created or expanded.
Well, they're very involved in Penwar. So, the former
Okay.
premier Sandy Silver is our vice president, and
Okay.
and they're very engaged. So we're also doing a critical mineral supply chain, security issue, or a grant with Yukon and Saskatchewan. But
okay.
No, thanks, Lorraine. We are really hoping that some of the the pilots that we've been discussing can work for FIFA. From on the CBP side, our port director at Blaine is just such a great guy, Harmit Gill, and he's so innovative. I'm just thrilled with his willingness to look at how we can address some of these challenges before we get to FIFA.